And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to Shaping Success. I am your host, Wes Tankersley. We've got a regular edition of Shaping Success, and when I say that, go check out, we have Shaping Success, and we have Shaping Success Treasure Valley. If you're local to the Treasure Valley where I live, please go check those episodes out. They're great entrepreneurial stories from people who are around the valley. Go support them. But today, we have someone who's a little bit further away from us. His name is James Oliver, and he's created this awesome protein bar, Atlas bar. It's a great, I've tried them a couple times and they're really good. But we're going to talk about how he created that and the types of things that he went through in order to get where he is today and hopefully help you take that leap. James, what is going on?
How's it going?
It's good. It's good, man. It's always awesome to have someone on here who is kind of driven and doing things that, you know, other people aren't doing or are doing, you know, just kind of show people how it is. And I was reading a little bit of your bio. One of the things about this podcast is I don't ever really like to know too much because I like the conversation to just flow and me be like, hey, well, that's interesting. How'd you do that? How, you know, like have it be authentic. And I don't like giving out a bunch of questions or whatever because I just want to see where it goes. But I saw that you, excuse me, you did like 100-mile run. Is that?
I did do that. Yeah. I've done a couple of things like that. And that specific one, I've always been frustrated with companies that sell products that the leadership of those companies themselves would not consume. So for instance, like the CEO of McDonald's would probably not feel comfortable consuming McDonald's 3 meals a day or feeding it to his kids 3 meals a day.
Right.
And so if you accept that, you're like, okay, well, then you probably shouldn't be selling it to billions of people around the world. It's similar. There's similar stories I know with like tech executives who like don't let their children use the very platforms that they create. So
Right.
because it doesn't sit well with me because I'm like, if you are creating something, if you are trying to basically convince people to trade their hard-earned money for whatever it is that you've created, then you should stand behind it. So I was like, okay, how can you really put your 8 Atlas bars for a week? And then I was like, yeah, that would be like cool. Not that difficult. It would kind of be,
Yeah, they're pretty good.
It would be kind of like, maybe you get tired of it. But then I was like, all right, well, what if I did that, but I also ran 100 miles only eating them? And I was like, yeah, that's probably gonna be a little bit harder. So yeah, that was the challenge that I set for myself. So it was 100 miles over 7 days, and I ended up doing it in 6 just because I was feeling good. So it ended up being like 17 miles a day, and I think I had like 84 bars during it.
Oh,
and
wow.
I only had bars. That was the only food I had. I did have like electrolytes,
Yeah.
but
You
I
gotta
had
have
no other calories besides the bars. So I don't know if it had its intended impact, but
It's crazy,
at
like
least,
looking at it, 20 grams of protein times 84, man, that's a lot of protein in 6 days.
it's a lot of protein. Yeah, it's a lot of protein in 6 days. But yeah, I feel very strongly that if you are going to create something and you are going to market it and talk about it and expect people to consume it, then you should stand behind it. And you should stand behind it 100% because otherwise, what are you doing?
Yeah, I really like that sentiment because I feel like that's kind of the same thing. I sell window coverings now, but I was a PE teacher for, you know, some time, and, you know, you're sitting there and you're talking to kids about being healthy and all that stuff. And when you look over at, I was overweight, and I'm looking over at this overweight PE teacher telling these kids that they have to do these things to be healthy. And I felt guilty the whole time. I was like, I need to get myself in shape so that I can prove to them that this is really what they need to do, you know? So it's living by it, right?
Yeah. Did you have to administer the presidential fitness test
Yeah.
when you were?
I did. I actually
You
had to
did?
take it for college. One of the requirements for being a PE teacher, and I went to college later in life, so I was 34, I think. And there's all these other like 18-year-old kids are in there taking the presidential fitness test. And I went back to school because I changed tires for 11 years and I had a messed up knee. Well, I couldn't run. Like the doctor basically says, you can't run because if you run, you're just going to screw up this surgery that you just had that will make everything bad. So we had to figure out a workaround to that. So I had to do I think it was called a Brockport walk test instead. but all those guys had to do the pacer and they had to do, and I did everything else, but the pacer was one of them that I didn't do. And it was just like, man, that's administering that and seeing some of these kids do that stuff too. Did you do that? Do you know what the pacer is? Did you do that in school?
I don't think I did that.
Okay, so that's part of the new presidential fitness test. Instead of doing like the mile run, which is what it was when I was in school, they do this thing called a pacer where you're basically going in between, I think it's 20 yards. And so you wait for the beep on this, like we'd run it through the loudspeaker system. So you hear the beep, you run to one end, you wait, you hear the beep, you run to the other end, and it just starts getting faster. And like average kid would probably do, 25, 30. And then like you'd have some kids that do 50, 60. And at one point when I was teaching middle school, I had a kid do like 123. Like it was insane. And like here I am, I could probably do like 15.
Yeah.
So
that's a crazy one because there's no way to win. You can only endure and last, but there's no finish, and it gets progressively harder and harder because the longer you go, the more gassed you are. And then on top of that, the faster it gets.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's a real psychological war. I think I remember in my high school, the soccer team did the beep test, which I think is the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Beep.
Yep.
I can like hear the beep in my head, but I never had to do it. I always wanted to do it because my mind was just like, I wonder, I wonder how you do on it. Because that's the type of thing that, you go all out on that.
Yeah, and it's been a while because I think it measured like you could take however many you did, and you could measure I think your VO2 max or something. But like it was a real good way it was better than the mile because anyone can run a mile. It's just like how fast you do it. But this is like an endurance thing where it's like even like you said, it gets faster as you go. So you have to work harder and harder as you go. And typically, I remember when I ran the mile, like maybe the last half a mile I was running as fast as I could because I was trying to pick it up, but it wasn't like the last lap. Some kids are never stop running the same pace. I couldn't do that.
Yeah. I remember that was the mile that actually it did some psychological work on me because I didn't realize it at the time, but I actually had asthma as a kid, and so I always would dread the mile. I remember I grew up in New England, and it would always be the fall when we would do it, so it would be cold out, and the cold air, a lot of the times, I think if you have asthma, it exacerbates it. So it makes it even harder to breathe. But I didn't know that I had it. And the thing that I always say is you only have one pair of lungs. So I just assumed that everybody else felt like they were drowning when they were running because that's how I felt. And I was like, I guess this is just what it feels like to run. So I always dreaded the mile run when it came around because, the feeling was just really uncomfortable. But that took me a couple of years to get over when I started getting into more of like the ultra distance stuff that I've done. Cause we just talked about obviously how I ran 100 miles. So at some point I broke through that, but for a very long time, I just avoided running because I never did it, because I didn't enjoy doing it, because it was uncomfortable, and because I never did it, I never got good at it.
Yeah, and that's crazy that you figured that out later in life, because I'm assuming that you just think about where you would be now if you knew that then. Like, all I need is a couple puffs on an inhaler and I'd be good to go, but I don't know, so I just didn't do it. Those 10,000 hours don't come as fast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the Atlas bar. So you when you said when you did this 100-mile run that you did, that was all you were eating. Why did you create it, and what's so different about it than other protein bars?
So the reason I created it, it's actually, the story originates in China of all places. So in school, in college, I studied, I got a degree in economics, but I studied languages as well. I studied Arabic and Chinese. And as part of studying Mandarin Chinese, I went to China. I lived there for 6 months. And at the time, I was doing more and more endurance stuff. Like, I was probably in the gym 5 or 6 days a week. And I knew that when I was going to China for this 6-month period, that my diet was going to look pretty different than it did in the States. I knew it was going to be very like rice based, very dumpling based. And it definitely was when I got there. But I was like, I want some way to kind of keep on track so that I don't like completely fall off the rails when I go over there. And so I was like, all right, well, I need some type of protein, some type of nutrition, because I'm not going to be getting as much protein as I usually consume. So it needs to be shelf stable because it's going to have to be with me for 6 months. It needs to be something that I'm going to want to eat every single day. It needs to be made of clean ingredients. And I looked for, like, I wasn't trying to make something. I was looking around for something, and there was nothing that really checked all those boxes that was convenient, shelf stable, had high protein, not a lot of sugar, and ingredients that you would feel comfortable putting in your body every single day, if not multiple times a day. So I made a couple hundred of them with my mom. I had her help me out and put them into Tupperware containers. I don't even know how many Tupperware containers over, but a bunch of them in my suitcase. And then I was probably having them every single day, sometimes multiple times a day when I was over there. And then I got back and I had 1 year left of school, and I was spending a lot of time thinking, like, what do I want to do once I get out of school? Because once you get out of school, if you take that route, if you go high school to college, when you get out the other side of college, that's really the first time in your life where you're kind of off the script. You don't have somebody like telling you what to do, and you have full autonomy over how you want to choose to really spend your life. So I was doing a lot of thinking about that. And before we started recording, we talked a little bit about risk, but I was thinking, you know what, I'm 22, and I know it feels scary now, and it feels very daunting, and like there are a lot of other ways to go that feel safer and more comfortable. But the longer I wait to try and do something, the more risky it's going to become, because I'm 22 right now.
Right.
I don't have any real obligations. I don't have a mortgage to pay. I don't have a family to care for. And if there's any time to take a risk, it's now. So while all of them, basically everybody I knew was going into like more established roles, corporate world, I I bought 5,000 of these. I found a manufacturer and I bought 5,000 of these bars. And I was like, all right, let's see if I can sell them. So what I would do is I would get up at 4 a.m. I would drive Uber during the morning rush from like 4 to 9 a.m. in Boston. And then during the day, I would work on the company. And then I would drive Uber again during the evening rush. And I basically just tried to, because the company at that point, I didn't have any funding. I didn't like get investors or anything. So I was basically just making the money from Uber and then putting it into the company. And I was just really going as hard as I can to try and see if I could make it work. So I got those 5,000 bars, I think a week or so after I graduated from school. And I remember looking at them in my living room, in my parents' living room, because that's where they came. And I just remember looking at them and I was like, man, how am I going to sell all of these? And I just started, like, every single day, you just have that doubt. You just like, I think some people more than others. But I just remember being like, what am I doing? What am I just like wasting my time? Like, why am I doing this? And you just have to ignore that and keep going. And so I sold through that 5,000 bars. Then I doubled it to 10,000. And I basically was like, I'm just going to do this as long as I can. And years later, I'm still doing it. So yeah, as you could tell, I never started this I wasn't like, I want to make a huge company. I was just looking to solve my own problem. And then through that process, I thought that this could be a vehicle for really getting a lot of good experience and for taking a path that might not be open to me later in life. So yeah, that's how I ended up. That's the short story.
I want to backtrack a little bit because you had said, like, before you went to China, like, you actually made these yourself, like, at home. Is that how that happened?
Yeah, I still actually have the original, like, the recipe. So there's when you start making a food product, a lot of people, they will start making a recipe in their home. Most of it, like 99% of that time, that recipe you make in your home is not going to work at commercial scale. It's just, it's very different. Like if you're making 12 cookies in your home, that's very different than making 12 million cookies
Right.
in a facility. So you'll have to just make certain changes to the formula. Like you're using a mixer at home that's like a small KitchenAid,
Hmm.
and in a commercial facility, you're mixing like literally thousands of pounds at
Right.
once. And there's a lot of different components to that come into play that aren't really in play when you're
It's
in
not
the
as
kitchen.
easy as just doubling the recipe.
No, no, and I think a lot of people think it is, and that can get you into some trouble because then you are like, oh, I made these cookies and they're great for a week, but now when I try to put them on the shelf of a grocery store, they get mold at like the 30-day point, which isn't great for the customer experience.
Right.
So yeah, I initially made it at home, and I still have the recipe in a spreadsheet somewhere, like the original recipe. The current recipe has definitely evolved from that, but the framework and the kind of skeleton for it is the same.
What was the original flavor? Because this is peanut butter, right? So what's our peanut butter
Yeah.
chocolate chip? What was the original flavor?
The original flavor was, I think the original flavor actually, like the first one ever, was like a cherry chocolate chip.
Okay.
So it actually had like pieces of cherry and chocolate chips in it. And over time, we have really just made flavors that we listen to our customers, and we've made flavors that seem to resonate more with our customers. And peanut butter chocolate it's a hard combination to beat. Reese's built
Yeah.
I don't know, $10 billion empire on that flavor combination without going anywhere else. So
Yeah.
yeah.
If you don't like peanut butter, there's something wrong with you. I just don't get that. You got problems.
One of my friends actually, he like detests both chocolate and
Oh,
peanut butter. And
heck,
I was like,
yeah.
yeah.
How can you be my friend?
I know. I remember I gave him chocolate once because I was like, I don't believe you that you don't like this. And so I gave him chocolate, and he like it. You would have thought that I gave him poison. You would have thought that I gave him cyanide. He started like gagging and like spit it out. I was like, man, you were wired different.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. So you've been so how old are you now? Obviously we talked a little bit. I'm a little bit older than you, I'm sure. You seem a little
Yeah.
bit younger, but 22, you go to school. How long have you been actually doing this?
So the first real year in business was 2018.
Okay.
So I've been doing
Wow.
this for
Right before
7
COVID,
years.
right?
Right before
Or-
COVID. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, COVID was very interesting for food companies. A lot of companies really benefited from it. Like
Right.
if you look at like frozen pizza had like a 500%. It was like a crazy sales for most foods in the store. But bars was one of the few that had the opposite effect because people are primarily consuming bars when they're on the go. And there was not a lot of people on the go for the 2020, 2021 period in the country. So that was interesting. And then there's all these like supply chain things that happened from that due to COVID, and there's this lag effect. So yeah, I think another thing that I'm definitely grateful for, and a thing that I also was thinking about when I was thinking about whether or not to take the risk, is just thinking of my options at the time when I was 22. And I was like, you know what, my worst case scenario, and this was actually a very helpful exercise for me to do, was really thinking about the worst case scenario and naming it and being very specific about it. Because if you can get comfortable with the worst case scenario of something that's going to happen, then you really are like, oh, is that it? Is that the worst thing that's going to happen? Because if so, then you just kind of get rid of this ambiguous like fear that you otherwise have.
Right.
And I was like, worst case scenario is, hey, like I spend a bit of my savings on this, and I learn a bunch about how to, I don't know, start a food company and how to do all of these things that you have to do when you're trying to build a company. And given what my other options are at this time, I think that that's probably going to be better overall experience for me than anything else I have available to me right now. So I was very comfortable with that worst case scenario. And I was kind of expecting it to happen.
Well, it's crazy because you think about it like going into business. Like I when I was coming up, you know, my parents were like, go to college, get a degree, go work here, go do this, go do that, make sure you have retirement, make sure you have this. And so like I would have thought exactly like you did. Like at that time when you're that young, that's the time to take the risk, right? And here I am at 44 taking the risk, you know, starting my own business and doing the same thing. But it's like, it's tough because a lot of people are scared to do that because they don't. And I love that exercise, because I think that if you think about that, really in the end, are you going to, it's kind of like, are you going to die? Like that's not what's going to happen. You're just going to have to be uncomfortable again, right? Like I'm sure you could have gone and gotten 9 to 5. You could have kept just driving Uber. You could have there was something that would have been there for you had it not worked out. But if you didn't take the risk, you never would have had the opportunity to do what you're doing now. So a lot of people they wait way too long and then they never do it.
Yeah, exactly. There's actually this isn't a new thing. I think it might be Seneca. It's one of the Greek philosophers, but he writes about doing this exercise where he would basically for I think every few months, he would do this thing where for a day or two, he would just eat nothing but like rice and just sleep on like the dirt. And basically the point of it was to remind himself like, okay, this is like the worst case scenario. And if you're comfortable with this, like this isn't that bad.
Right.
And so if you're comfortable with this, then you should be really comfortable with taking any risk because this is the worst case scenario and you're completely fine. So I think the fear of the worst case scenario is often much, much worse than the actual worst case scenario.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure of that 100% because people just like you could let that freeze you pretty easily.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned that like you ordered 5,000 bars, you were Ubering, and then like in between you were going out and you're trying to get your bars in stores. Is that how you kind of went about it? Was it like, okay, I'm going to go drive now? There's this convenience store, and was it like as simple as saying, "Here's a box, will you sell this?" Did you have to go talk to suppliers or people who put that product in the stores, or how did that work?
No. So my initial plan was I mapped out all of the CrossFit gyms in the Boston area. And the reason that I decided to go that route was for a couple of reasons. One, because I knew that in a store, like if you go into any store, there's like 50 different bars. And
Right.
if you go into any gym, they maybe have like one, maybe two. And so I was like, well, I would rather be 1 out of 3 than 1 out of 50.
Right.
I also know because I did do some preliminary research and I actually just sent a cold survey. I basically just said like, hey, I'm a student in school and I'm doing this project. And I sent out a survey I just cold emailed like hundreds of CrossFit owners. And I described the product. I didn't even have anything at this point. And I was like, hey, this is a product that is a hypothetical product. It doesn't exist. But based on the description of this product, would you consider purchasing it? And 100% of the respondents, I think I got like 50 responses, and 100% of them said they would consider purchasing it.
Uh-huh.
And so that actually was what gave me the confidence to then be like, all right, I'm going to put some money into this because I now have, it's not just like my wild hunch. I have a proof point from others that there could actually be some demand here. So I already had kind of validated it with that community that there was some interest there. And that's why I went that route. And you also just have one decision maker. Like a lot of the times CrossFit gyms are owned by an individual or a couple individuals. And so you can just walk in there and a lot of times you'll just talk to the owner because sometimes they're coaches too. And you can just be like, hey, I'm starting this, would love to come in and just like set up a table and give out samples on a Saturday to some of your members and just see what they think. And if they like them, would love to talk to you about potentially carrying them. And I did that. So I would do that during the day. I would drive Uber and then I would do that during the day. And it was good to do like later in the morning because like gyms are usually pretty busy between like probably like 6 and like 10. Right. And people are more relaxed around like 9 to 10. So you can get them and actually have a conversation with them. So yeah, that was my initial plan, was to really like validate it and be like, in the first year, is this real? And is this an actual business that could scale? That's what I knew that what I was doing though would never scale. Like I knew that at a certain point I would have to figure out a business model that could evolve beyond me just driving around in my car. Mm-hmm. But the purpose of that was not to like build a business. It was just kind of to prove to myself that it could work. So that's really what I focused on doing I graduated in May of 2017. And then the rest of 2017, I really just focused on doing that. And I drove a Prius. So I got some good gas mileage.
Right. Looking for those downhills where you don't have to use the motor.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man. So where do you go? Where do you go from there? Because now it's like, hey, now we're gonna try and get this. Where can we get this? Is it like pretty much everywhere that you can get these now, or where's the primary place that you got in, and how did you get into the next level of that?
So mostly we sell a lot online, and I really like online because one, you have a direct relationship with the consumer. You can speak to them and build build a relationship that you can't really do. Like if you were to buy something from Walmart or from
Right.
Whole Foods or grocery store, like you're just buying off the shelf. You don't really, the only thing you know about the brand is what you can read on the packaging.
Mhm.
And in a category like this, where there's a lot of competition, it is helpful to have additional real estate to explain, like I have to you, like why this is different. Like the fact that Atlas is one of the very few bars that you could actually make in your own kitchen, because it's made with ingredients that you could just find from a grocery store. And if you look at the ingredient list of many bars, that is just not possible. They do not sell a lot of the ingredients that you'd find in other bars at your local grocery store. And so, yeah, really focusing on what makes the brand different is a lot easier to do when you have more real estate, when you have the ability to send emails to people, to have multiple web pages that you can tell that story in a way that you really just can't do as well in a kind of more retail environment. So I really focused on moving towards online after I had kind of proven out the model in 2017. And I knew that you could scale a company pretty well just online without a lot of additional people. So 2017 and 2018 was kind of like, okay, is this real? Can I actually do this? And then from there, I was like, okay, how do you actually scale this into a company, and not just me driving around in my Prius, walking into CrossFit gyms, like death of a salesman, just selling bars door to door.
Right. What happens with those CrossFits though? Because like I know in the beginning, like you said, you're going there. Are they still like, hey, can you drop us by, a couple boxes or whatever? Or is that just you just direct them all to online?
Yeah, they will buy from we have like a wholesale site dedicated for them. So I think I continued to do in-person drop-offs for like 2, 3, maybe even I probably up until COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for the 2 or 3 years after that, I continued to do in-person drop-offs for a lot of them. But at a certain point, you can't
Right.
continue to just drop off all the packages, especially with Boston traffic makes it a lot less efficient.
As far as like your company goes now, because now it's like a big thing, right? It's not just one guy doing whatever. How big has that gotten, and how has that helped you to just kind of? Are you more of like the face now, or are you still making calls and doing other things too? What's your job now?
That's a great question. My job now is I'm still very much hands-on, and I really enjoy being hands-on. I would say my job is, and I think this is probably true of most people who are trying to lead or build a company, is your job is to basically be the architect. And I think that's a hard change to make. Like it really is. If you think about like a build site, your job is to be the architect and get the people around you to help you build. Like if you're trying to build a house, you're like, hey, this is the house that I want to build, and you need to get the right contractors, the right
Right.
people to help you build that house. Your job isn't to nail in every nail, is not to lay the cement. You can do that, but I think that is a recipe for burnout if you try to do everything yourself,
Yep.
and you can't scale that way. It's not possible to. So I think what is difficult to do, and I think you often see, sometimes you see people make this transition, but um, it's a hard one to make, going from, hey, I created this product and I'm like a good product person, I know how to create something that people want, and I can connect with people, and I can market it, to then going towards that more architectural, where you then have to focus on building the system around the product, and not just focusing on the product itself. So I
Yeah.
would say that my day to day right now is like kind of trying to architect that, and also running it to the best of my ability.
Yeah. Doing the R&D and making sure that everything is flowing the way it's supposed to and going where you want it. And
Yeah.
finding those people to, I mean, and that's the tough part, right? Like finding those good subs is what you're really looking for. You're looking for those people who can do this part of the job, so you can focus more on the bigger picture.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
So how many flavors are there are you going to stop at bars, or are you going to start doing other things too, or what's that look like?
Right now we have 3 flavors. We had more about a year ago, but we just decided to like we knew that a couple of our flavors were really resonating, and this is I think fairly common with product companies where you'll have say like it's the 80/20 rule is just kind of a like a it's a common number that people use for something like this, where you have 20% of your products that do 80% of your sales. That actually was pretty close to where we were at. So I was like, all right, well, let's just focus on those 20%, and let's focus on those 20%. We can sunset these other products for now. We can always come back to them, but let's focus on these 20% and see if we can make other products that people enjoy as much as they like these ones. So we have 3 right now. We're going to come out with a 4th soon. And then we have 4 more that are being worked on right now for flavors. We are definitely going to get into more things beyond just bars. I would say bars is the foundation, but I think we got some time, we got some work to do before we can, I would say, earn that. I think you have to, I would like us to earn that ability to do that, because I think there's a risk in trying to do it prematurely.
Yeah, well, and it sounds to me like, through this whole conversation that you really do really good research and try and figure out, like you were talking about finding out, well, is there an interest in this before I even try to do it, instead of just like going, all right, let's just throw this out here and see what happens.
Yeah.
Like you have to do a little bit of that groundwork and make sure that you're in the right spot before you do something different, right?
Yeah, totally. And that's something that I was thinking about actually just randomly today prior to coming on and having this conversation. But there's a very common saying that I subscribed to when I was younger, which was, you've probably heard it, like burn the boats. Like you got to burn the boats. You got to basically go all in. And I disagree with that. I do not think like if you have an idea and you're like, okay, I think I want to start this company, you should not just quit your job tomorrow and be like, all right, I'm going to build this company. It's just an extremely risky thing to do. And I think what makes more sense and is just, it doesn't, like, starting a company doesn't actually have to be risky. You can start small and be like, okay, you can kind of think about it as being like a scientist. You're like, I have this hypothesis, I have this theory about this thing, and let me test it first to see if there's any actual demand for it. So if you're starting, I don't know, if you're starting like a window washing company, you're like, I think that there's room in my neighborhood for another window washing company. Why don't I go around the neighborhood, put out flyers saying that, hey, I have this window washing company, see how many calls I get, see how much interest I get before deciding to go all in on it. So you're basically running an experiment and being like, I have this hypothesis that this can work. Let me do a small experiment that's not that risky to prove whether or not that hypothesis is right. And if not, then you can adapt as you need to. But if it is, then you're like, okay, like that is kind of, I wasn't thinking about it that way at the time, but that's almost exactly what I did, where I sent that survey out and I was like, okay, I have more confidence now because I have actual feedback from people that they want this thing. So that gives me confidence to put in like $5,000, which at the time was a lot of money to me, into bringing this thing to life. But I didn't just, I don't think a smart way, if I were advising myself back then, I wouldn't be like, hey, you have this great idea, you should go all in on it and not basically be like in an echo chamber and not really get feedback from others or from the market to see if people actually want this thing.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense. I mean, that's kind of the same way that I did what I did. It was like, I did my other job. I did the same thing for like 6 years for someone else. And I'm sitting there going, well, why am I going to do this? But I'm not going to go today. Well, I can quit right now. Like I had to get things in order before I could do that. And that's really what it is. It's like, it's just because you can't do it today doesn't mean that you can't do it at all. You just have to you got to get your ducks in a row. And that's what you did.
Totally. So. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, like you mentioned before, that a lot of people like kind of wonder and they're like, well, when this happens, I'll do this. And it doesn't have to be a black and white decision. It doesn't have to be like a 0 to 1 decision. You can be like, all right, I'm going to work my job. my 9 to 5. And then on the weekends and maybe a couple nights, I'm going to work on this other thing. And I'm just going to keep moving this rock forward. And I'll see if there's any real demand here, if there's any traction here. But you can do that in a way that you're not really taking any risk because you're keeping your full-time stable thing. And I do think that taking the burn the boats approach can be very risky, because once you do that, you are then almost in like fight or flight mode, because yes, you do have to make this work, and you're like, I need to make this work. And that can be helpful because it creates some urgency, because you're like, I need to pay my rent, I need to pay my mortgage. So it does create urgency, but it can also compromise your decision making, because you could make some decisions that you might not otherwise make if you were in kind of a more like stable and not as like agitated state of mind.
Right.
If you know what I mean.
you make those. I mean, I'm going to be honest. Like, I've been there. Like, you make that decision when you go a couple of days without having anything. Like, when the one thing comes up, you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to sell it for less this time because I have to get it, because I got nothing going on the last 2 days. So, I mean, that's the way it works. You know, if you can figure it out where you can take it easy. Like, I like the idea that you were driving Uber, because it's like, this is guaranteed. I can go do this. I can drive this many. I can pick up as many people as I want. And in the middle of the day, I can take a little bit of break and I can go work on this. And then maybe the afternoon, it becomes a point where you don't even have to do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I do remember thinking like, man, if this is like I probably don't want to drive Uber forever, but if this is like, I don't know, my worst case scenario, like, this isn't that bad.
Yeah, right. You found something that would work if it had to. I'm certain you wouldn't be driving Uber forever. So, well, hey man, it's been awesome having you on here. If people want to get some of these bars, where can they get them at? What's the website, and what's the best place? Do you have social media and stuff like that where people can follow you?
Yeah, atlasbars.com is our site. A lot of people get them from Amazon. We'll actually have a new site up in the next week or so. And yeah, Atlas Bars on all social is where you can find us. But I appreciate the time. It's been great talking, and appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man, awesome conversation, and I really hope that it helped people find their way when they're trying to look and, you know, maybe take that risk and get themselves out there.
Awesome.
All righty. All right, everyone. Thanks for hanging out with my interview with James. We really appreciate it. These are really good. If you haven't had them, I really enjoy these Atlas bars. They sent me some, and I've been eating them on the go. You know, I just go drop them in my lunchbox, and that's what's convenient about it. It's like, you need something, you grab it, you eat it, you're done, and you got a meal. So, appreciate you hanging out here. This show is brought to you by Shade Bros, which is my company. If you're in the Treasure Valley and you're looking for some window coverings, please give me a call, 208-99-SHADE. And until next time, I challenge you to find the shape of your success.